Good.
So, quick
Well,
context on this episode. We recorded this weekend, as we usually do on Saturday morning. We had a whole bunch of technical issues, and so we're re-recording this episode. So, Ted is currently at the airport. I'm in my office. Hopefully, the Wi-Fi works out this time, and we can get the episode out.
yeah, in classic Ted and Johnny fashion, we were like, no, we're just gonna like grin and bear it. We're gonna like muscle our way through it. We
Yeah.
probably should have just taken a little bit of a beat, but we're really excited to dive in. We're gonna cover Feelings check-in, Merkle full-time designer, Memecoins, channel passes, new channel stuff, cast actions, and then I would love to actually even talk about some of the newer stuff that's even come out since we first recorded on Saturday before the re-record.
Yeah, let's dive in. So, yeah, let's dive in. Feelings check-in. How are you feeling? How was your week?
Man, okay. After we recorded on Saturday, you guys, Johnny called me. We were talking, and he was like, "How are you actually?" I was like, I think that there's so much going on, and it's really hard to please everyone. And I think we talked about it. It's like, okay, there's a lot going on with part time, or like my first week, quote unquote, working a free agency. Yeah, like I had more meetings than I've ever had in like the past month, and I feel like so many people have questions, things coming out of nowhere. Okay, I really want to clone myself and also like multiply the hours in the day by 5. So that was on Saturday. And then I went outside, got in the water, did a bunch of nature things and got more grounded, happy eclipsed. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah, it's good. I know the feeling of just feeling like you're drinking from a fire hose and wanting to pause time while also multiplying yourself. It's like there's only certain things that you can do, and the number of the more those things increase, the more kind of overwhelming it becomes because it's really hard to delegate because only you have the context, only you have the relationship, only you can do it. And so then you have to start becoming economical. You have to start making trade-offs and be like, well, I'm going to have to let some things fall by the wayside. And so now, as painful as it is for somebody who's like a classic alpha overachiever and who wants to be on
Yeah.
top of every single thing there is, you're just like, I got to choose now. And it's a painful process. I'm going through that myself. And I think maybe you can kind of hire for that. I think you can, but it's also, you inevitably have to make trade offs and kind of prioritize ruthlessly. So I feel that. I'm glad you're doing well. I'm glad you're doing better. Glad you've had the time to kind of
Thanks.
reflect. And yeah, I've had a busy week too. I was in New York for NFT NYC. The energy there was infectious and exhilarating. It was great to see so many people who I've known from the internet to hang out with them in person and uh, deepen the connection that I've had. So that was cool. It was cool to
Do they
uh,
recognize you? Like, do people
mm,
know when they see you that you're nonlinear? Or is it like with a
some
podcast
people.
now, people know what we look like?
Yeah,
But
some
is there
people.
like a,
Yeah, there were a few events that I was at, and a lot of people came up to me, and that was cool. That felt great. But then there'd be other times where I'd be, like, talking to someone, and they'd be like they'd say, like, "What do you do?" It's like, "Oh, founder of this company called Fabric. We built a product called Hypersub." And they'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I know that." And I'd be like, "You do?" Like, it was very surprising just for someone to know, like, what we've built. That was cool, and then other people would be like, "Oh, you're the meme guy." So that would
yeah,
bring a cool thing. So, yeah, it was good. I think that the overall, I'd say the energy just around NFTs in general, art, crypto, like, builders, like, it was really strong and encouraging to be around. So, yeah, came back. My kid was sick. My wife was, like, tired with our newborn. Yeah, it's a lot trying to have 2 kids and run a company, I'll tell you
which
that.
is a kid in
Yeah,
and of
exactly.
itself.
Like my 3rd child.
Yeah, it's a
Yes,
lot.
a
You
lot.
set a really good standard, and I think you remain positive and upbeat and optimistic and good energy despite it all.
Oh, well, thank
Thank
you.
you.
I appreciate that. There's this book actually that I read that I love so much. It's called Deep Survival. It was written maybe
Ooh.
like 5 or 10 years ago. And the like subline, like the subtitle of the book is Who Lives, Who Dies, and Why. And it's about these like horrible things that happen to people, like plane crashes, like boats going adrift, like people being lost in the forest and stuff. And basically, he says you see this range of outcomes, like people who have all this experience and still die, and then people who have like basically no experience or tools and who survive. So, like, what is it? What is the differentiating factor? And he
Hmm.
basically says it's all mindset. It's all like
Yeah.
positive mental attitude. Like, that is the difference between survival and death. And I actually think that, starting a startup and like having a family, like, I think that the mindset is upstream of everything. It's like
Yeah.
that's how you get through it in stride versus like succumb to the stress and anxiety of it all. So it's like something that I try to really, be just to prioritize is the mindset. How you
Yeah.
respond to hardship is like ultimately what defines you. So
Yeah. I laugh
yeah,
all the time because that I agree with so much. And again, I can bring back sports analogy, but I used to play basketball growing up. Remember, like my finger would get hit with the ball or something would happen and like something would happen to my finger. And I'd like run over to my dad on the sideline and be like, Dad, I think my finger's broken. And he'd like pull it a little bit and he'd be like, it's just jammed, like get back in there, like don't be a baby. And I was like, okay. And like I had to like internalize that and be like, it's just a jam, it's just a jam, and like play out the rest of the game. And this happened like multiple times. And of course,
yeah.
every time after, we'd go to the doctor a few days later, X-ray, and like my joint is shattered. It was like fully broken. But my dad was like,
Oh,
my dad was like, no, I was like giving you character. Like if you think it's surmountable and if you think you can overcome it, you will always be
yeah,
able to do it.
yeah.
And so now I laugh because like now all my joints on my fingers are super messed
Oh
up,
my
but
goodness.
I'm,
Yeah, I think that's a powerful and painful lesson, but it's
oh,
true.
for
It's
sure.
good. Good.
Best.
Awesome. Feelings check-in.
Good feelings check in. Okay. Well, last time we kicked off our episode talking about Merkle's fundraising. And then on April Fool's Day, Dan posted, we're hiring our first full-time designer. Here's the requirements. If you're interested, send me a DC, etc. And then Sina here said, this is one of those non-fungible roles that only exist at a particular company at a particular moment in time. It's an opportunity to shape design patterns that will likely define the next era of the web. And I was curious, given that you are a designer yourself, and I think have already reshaped what creator experiences look like on chain. What do you think about this role? Are you excited about it?
Yeah, thank you. Just quick aside, that DC badge number is giving me anxiety.
Dude, I have this down from 364.
Oh my
This is
god.
down.
That's out of control. That is outrageous. Yeah, so I love Cena. I've known Cena many years. I think he's great. I think I will disagree with him here though. With and the reason why is because of Dan. I think Dan is extremely opinionated. He's a force of nature. Warpcast, the client, and Farcaster, the protocol, would not be where they are without him. And so I think that he is the designer, and that's probably never gonna change. Now, that's not to
Yeah.
say that there couldn't be a role for somebody like for him to find his kind of Johnny Ive, you know? That person's so hard to find, and I think that I don't actually know if you can find those people. I mean, there's these great creative partnerships throughout history, like you've got Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, or Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. I mean, you see this in music all the time, but you also see it with like producers, like music producers and bands. You see this with like artists and sometimes they're gallerists.
Mhm.
These are really special connections that are almost cosmic in how they come together. I feel that with my co-founder Danny. Like we've known each other, 15 years and we have that kind of relationship. I don't know that you can recruit for it. So I guess like I think that Cena's cast is the best version of what this role could be. It's like the most
Mhm.
aspirational sort of definition of it. And I will say that like, you don't have a lot of control over those kinds of relationships forming. I think what's maybe more, realistic is that they just find a phenomenal designer who can put a design system in place, a component library in place that allows the team to continue moving really fast, but that introduces some novel interactions. I think
Yeah.
0x designer is a good example of somebody who's kind of thinking outside the box in terms of the little micro interactions as well as some of the like bigger interactions that the protocol could facilitate. I think at the end of the day, design is something that really everybody inside the company does and the user base does as well. And
Yeah.
so the best what I, like the best version of this role is someone that I imagine being extremely tapped into that and someone who listens and who's someone who acts as a kind of, empathetic shepherd for these ideas and these emerging trends and behaviors.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think it's going to be a dance with Dan Romero just because of how I mean, I think actually Dan is a phenomenal designer. It's
Yeah.
weird to call him that because it's not his title, it's not his background. But I mean, it's remarkable how
Yeah.
far they've come with basically Dan being in the designer's driver's seats.
I agree, I guess, is that I think there's probably like two forms of this role. As you mentioned, it can be like the Johnny Ive, Steve Jobs partnership because Dan is such a visionary and has been able to make it come to life. Or it's just somebody who is able to take Dan's vision and translate it into the design without having their own opinion, right? And so it'll be interesting to see who they hire. It will be interesting to see if there are new design primitives. So like at Facebook, one of the key design decisions I see was the news feed, which completely transformed the way that users consume and interact with content. Like the news feed is basically what every single feed is that we know and love today. Another design decision was they were the first ones to shift to a mobile first approach, I believe, and kind of provide access to Facebook through smartphones. That was one thing. I think Instagram made design to stick with like a square image format that helped create this unique aesthetic as well. And then introduce Instagram stories as well. That was like a new way to share ephemeral content as well. That has also completely transformed it. But did Snapchat? I forget if Instagram
Yeah,
was a
I think there were a bunch of designers who just like spit out their coffee because that was actually a very famous
Oops. Oh yeah, you're right.
straight rip-off. Yeah, so they got
Well,
kind of panned for that because
look
they
at
tried to
that.
buy Snapchat and they didn't sell, and so they basically just ripped, the premier feature.
I will say though, they ripped it really well. If in my
They
mind, I
did.
think Instagram stories are better than Snapchat. And also now they serve two different purposes. Like Snapchat is almost exclusively a messaging app, which is crazy.
I
And
mean,
then
when I
there's a
worked at
lot.
Google, like people a point that I made that a lot of people didn't like, but was true, is that I'd say like, yeah, Google gets all this credit for being this innovative company, but besides search, but like actually even including search, name one thing that Google has shipped that's a 0 to 1 product. Like
Nothing.
everything they've ever done is just a better version of what was already there, which is like actually, I mean, that's a powerful skill. That's like a powerful competency to look at something that emerges as a trend and say like, "Oh, we can do this way better." And then to do it better and then to win. It sucks to be on the, end of that, I guess, but like I definitely think it's a valid product strategy and like I won't like shit on that.
There's a lot of different ways that we can suss it out. I listened to Chris Dixon's Rick Rubin podcast recently where Chris was actually shitting on Google for that exact thing. He's like, they don't actually do anything and then they like extract value from companies who are doing it better. And because they're Google and because it's so centralized, like these companies with really good ideas who are doing it well don't see the light of day.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I would say with regards to Dan, benevolent dictator, I'd also like to bring up something else new that we've been complaining on our last podcast on Saturday morning. We had a whole list of Warpcast complaints, mostly around the spam. We were like, we don't like the spam. We don't like all the content we're seeing. It's getting really bad. And this came up in a host feedback group chat.
Mhm.
And then Dan ended up taking that host feedback group and making a cast about it saying, people don't want to see uninteresting replies in casts. Best way to solve for that is wait historical inbound engagement for a user, and that just making it harder to get started. Do you want to walk through kind of like your thinking on this, which leads to what I think is the best recommendation that has surfaced about discoverability?
Yeah, sure. So I think what was like the first thing I said, maybe this could be counterbalanced by an algo boost for new accounts with interesting casts. And this is really just a variation on something that they did, I think they did a while ago, which was that there was briefly a boost, like an algo boost for new accounts. and it
Yeah.
helped them get visibility. Obviously, that didn't scale, so I don't think they did that. And then, of course, Dan homed in on the hard part of this, which is like, how do you define what's interesting? Like, that's really hard.
Yeah.
And my proposal, which was, it's, influenced by PageRank. So again, context on PageRank, the quality of a site or the rank of a page is determined by the number of other sites that link back to it. So if you have a site that nobody links to, it's an island unto itself. That's a strong indicator that it's not that valuable. If you
It
have a
works with
site where
academic
you're,
papers, right? Like academic
yeah,
papers are kind of
exactly.
the same way.
Exactly. So a site that has a lot of sites linking to it is probably a good site. That's how they determine it. So basically my thinking here was take a similar approach, but just use power badge holders. Use the engagement from power badge holders as analogous to links. So
Mm.
replies, recasts, and likes are the equivalent of, hyperlinks.
Yep.
And so the more of those that you get from existing power badge holders, the stronger the signal that this is, quote, interesting. The fewer that you get, then that's a signal that it's not interesting. And so like, the delta. If you show the cast to a power badge holder and then there's no engagement, then that's a signal that it's a low quality cast. Now you don't want to roll this out to everyone at the same time. So that's why I said just a subset.
Yep.
And so that's essentially the proposal. And the incentive, I said is, this could be opt-in. And there's a lot of people who feel really strongly about quality, you being one of them, me. There's a lot, like Ildi was very, from shout out Ghost Links, from Outcasts. Like, so I think there are people who just genuinely care. We wouldn't even need the like status or like boost or like warps boost that comes from opting in to saying, yeah, show me these new casts and I'll either ignore them or I will engage with them. I think people would do it. And then that would be kind of how you scale quality. So that's the proposal. I think you were like, yeah, this is TikTok. You've
Yeah.
just,
I was like,
you just
I was like,
invented the TikTok algo.
yeah, I was like, this is how it's so funny. I love doing this podcast with you because we come from some different backgrounds and experiences that I was like, yes,
Yeah.
this is brilliant. This is how TikTok works.
Yeah.
So if people don't know this, is that TikTok will show your video to 200 people. And then based on those 200 people, I think I described this in the episode with Nick, but they will say like, how long are people watching? Are they commenting? Are they liking it? Are they sharing it? Like, what are they doing? And then based on that, they will decide, okay, do we roll this out to the next users?
Yeah.
And so I can even see this in a world in which like you say if there's no engagement, you display it to fewer. But if there is a lot of engagement, then you display it to more. And I actually think that Twitter has started taking this approach as well, because more and more I'm seeing random tweets pop up in my feed that are from like very low follower accounts that are really high value, but must have gotten a lot of engagement early on and have made it through the algorithm. So that's one thing. Also, I would sign up for it for your exact point is like, I just want to see good content from new people.
Yeah.
Like even right now, I like having Club Tag group chat. I like having all these group chats for real conversations, but like my whole purpose was like discoverability. Like you could meet so many new people and get so many diverse perspectives.
Yeah. Cause so today I quoted it and I was like,
Yeah,
hey,
let's
I'd
see.
love to hear why this won't work and suggestions for how to make it better. I mean, the thing is,
Yeah.
this is actually not that new of an idea. Like you've seen
No.
a version of this happen with hardware rollouts, like firmware updates. So when I worked on Chrome OS, I mean, there's like millions of users, and actually Chrome does this, Chromium. Well, no, Chrome, not Chromium, but they have a big update and they're like, okay, we're going to roll this update out to 2% of users globally, which is like, could be an enormous number. And we'll see how it goes. And then they're like monitoring errors and upgrades. And then if like, okay, it's looking good, we're going to go from 2% to 4, then to 8, 16, 32, and so on. Like there's these different strategies for rolling it out because you don't want to roll something out that is bad. And the only way to find it out is if you do it slowly. So it's like taking that same approach and just doing it to the lowest level thing, which is it's just a single cast for a new user. So I think like it's a good idea, but I think it's also, my guess would be that it's like extremely costly to roll this out because you have to
Yeah.
do this on a per cast basis for every new user.
I also think that there's a way in which Twitter used to do this with hashtags, but you don't need hashtags when channels. And I remember Merkle used to manifest the different channel stuff if it had a certain number of likes in the channel into the main feed. But what I've observed is that if people don't recognize you, they like your stuff in that channel. So you do get better distribution to a specific targeted. And a channel is a recency or a familiarity bias. People cast in Club Ted and like only the people who already have large followings use this, which is kind of a bummer. But I think that we've seen that. So the only doubt, like the way that I would think it could work is actually just choose 500 people that have diverse interests and dynamic interests who are across a bunch of different channels and roll it out to them in a beta version first and allow it to almost dictate the algorithm and make sure they're very online and they're liking a lot of stuff, because some of that's not it, and scale it out if you need to.
I agree.
Because like,
Me too.
yeah, our number one complaint was like, I don't come to Warpcast to waste my time. And I got into a fight with, I didn't get into a fight read with Euler Lagrange because he was like, you should show more leadership. And I'm like, that's not sustainable. No. You know this. We already talked about this 100 times.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that requires work, it's not, it won't work. Like,
also, yeah.
That's the nice thing about the kind of TikTok algo, is that it doesn't require anyone do anything other than just engage with content that they find, entertaining or interesting or meaningful or whatever. So yeah, I mean, so Dan's response was, I like this.
Do you know what that means? That is like when your Irish Catholic father, who doesn't show any affection, is like,
exactly.
I'm so proud of you.
I know. I feel like that's like just an outrageous, it's like it's an over the top endorsement of support.
Yeah. Usually you get fine or okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we dive into meme coins, do we want to do channel pass prices and monetization? Because I feel like this is a little bit related, as we just found out, related to work, is that this also came in the same group chat where everyone is like, just raise the channel pass price if you don't like spam.
Yeah, you made a great point. So let me tee up some context here with like what I've seen, and then your reaction to this. I was like, damn, classic Ted, very astute observation. So channel pass on memes up to just a few days ago was 100 warps. So the channel has, I don't know, 150, 160,000 followers, and you needed to basically buy 100 warps in order to cast to it. Casting to it gets you in the recent tab. And if your cast gets enough engagement, it'll get promoted into the trending tab. And there was a bunch of crap in there. And so Dan suggested boosting the price to 200 warps, 300, 500, whatever. So I was like, okay. So I boosted it to 300 warps. And it made absolutely no dent at all. In fact, all it really did is just resulted in me getting a ton more warps in a much shorter period of time. So I think I earned like 80,000 warps in like a day or something ridiculous. I mean, at this point, it's like, I think I have like, I don't know, 250,000 warps or something like that. I mean, it's just like a meaningless number. There's no, so I was like, I like, yo, give me something to do with these. So now maybe they'll, I don't know, they'll ship something that allows me to give more than just 100 warps back to people. I think figuring out a way to share this, because I mean, I can't, this is a meaningless number.
Sure,
Giving them back to people, would be great, so maybe this ties back into what we were just talking about, is like, if you're seeing stuff from new people and you're helping and you're engaging with it, and that's resulting in an increase in quality and an increase in UX for people, like, hell yeah, I would love to give you warps. I would love to have warps flow in your direction. And then you made such a great observation, which you can share.
But there's two observations. Is like, I was actually shocked when I implemented a channel pass in FarCon, and then Grin sends a message saying, oh my God, look at all these warps coming in. And I go and look and I'm like, wait, I'm not getting any warps. What are you talking about? And then I learned that the person who is the first channel host or started the channel gets all of the warps.
Yes, that's right.
So I would like, why am I even moderating this? Like, why am I moderating this? If I don't moderate it, people spam the channel. But this is a whole nother conversation. But what do I get if I moderate it? I get nothing except what? Like So then I started doing the math, trying to figure out why people would pay money and then get removed from a channel. And it's because I think there are a couple of channels on DGen where if you cap channels, you're actually getting a boost for your point. So let's see if I can find it and share the screen. So on dgen.tips, okay, there's a few channels receiving it. There's front end, frames, Farcon, design, Farcaster, product,
Oh,
etc.
wow.
List
They took
for a long
these off.
time. So if you only have to pay 100 warps, what is that, $5 to cast in these channels, yet you cast in this channel, you pay those 500 warps, and then you have your little group. I don't know, let's say you get like 10,000 worth of DGen tips. Your trade-off is like, of course I would post in this channel because I get 10,000 times 1.5 in order to get real money, not fake money with warps that I can't do that much with. Of course I'm going to keep posting. And so like Base is seeing this a lot. I know Design was seeing this from Eric. I'm seeing it in Farcon. I think Farcast her. But anyways, it's just like pure behavioral economics. Like it's pure economics. And you're going to continue to see this. And so like a channel pass is never going to work in any of these channels unless you implement a channel pass cost where someone goes, oh, the warps that I'm spending on this are going to be doesn't make sense for the DGen that I will receive. In addition to that, who is it easy to buy warps? Like what's super seamless to buy warps? Crypto natives. Meaning that, okay, when you start implementing channels, the people that it hurts most aren't the crypto natives or these airdrop farmers that have no problem just like buying it on MetaMask and then, or Coinvoice wallet or wherever, and then spending those warps. The people it hurts them, the people on mobile, you can't buy warps on mobile. You have to like get this weird link, etc. And then it hurts like the non-crypto natives who are trying to post interesting content in non-crypto channels like AI. Like I had a friend who was like, why do I need 500 warps to post in the AI channel? I only have 100. And then like, how do you get the 500 warps? Like if you could just gift these out to people, it'd be so different. And so I think we need to revisit like the monetization, or at least put like a best practice together for everyone else. Cause like it's been decentralized. Like now channel hosts can choose what the channel pass monetization strategy is, etc. Or we can talk to Yasik on the DGen strategy. But right now this is like only hurting crypto, like it's only hurting non-crypto.
Yep. I think that's well said. It's a very astute observation. It's like, as long as the upside from a DGen tip, especially with a multiplier, exceeds or even the probability of that exceeds the cost of a channel pass, then the trade will always be to just bear the cost of the channel pass all the way up to, what you think you're going to earn in DGen. And potentially even, it might even exceed that a little bit. I mean, the analogy that I think about is like when you go to like whatever baseball game or a football game, some event downtown, and the parking is like $60 or $80 in some cases, but a parking ticket is like 40.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, like I'll just do the parking ticket. Like it, So yeah, I think one of the things I think is sort of funny, but also sad is that like Dan for the longest time was like so intentional about how to scale the network. And I think we mentioned this on the last episode, like the difference between kind of Farcaster and Lens, and like Lens's strategy was, about as much growth as fast as possible. And then there was the criticism for the longest time was like, look, it's all the airdrop farmers, it's all NPCs, whatever. But the numbers like in Dune were super impressive and like totally dwarfed Farcasters. And people were saying to Dan, oh, you can't be such a gatekeeper. You got to open this up. And he's like, no, there's like this maniacal focus on quality. And it's like DGen in a lot of ways, like for as cool as it is, as novel as it is, as as it continues to propagate to other apps. I mean, it's really cool and impressive what's emerged, but it's also kind of cannonballed the Farcaster approach, like Dan's approach of just being really focused on quality. It's even taken people who are like, I mean, there's a lot of like really smart people who've been casting all kinds of interesting things that have just gone full DGen.
I am surprised by that.
I know. So it's like the number worm-brained all of us.
I mean, like, and I think a lot of people are getting some DGen giveaways. It comes across as very inauthentic. And so there's two things here. Is I think we said on the first episode, I was like, the client that will beat out Warpcast daily active users, if the client right now to beat Warp active users, it's a DGen client. It's exclusively, it's designed around DGen. It's fully DGen. that would win right now. Like most of the new users coming on are looking for like, again, like they're not engaging with my content. So that's one thing. And the second is like the inauthenticity of it in some ways. Like there are some very authentic. I think it's fine to offer a tip degen if somebody's giving you something valuable. Like Linda does this a lot with Bounty Caster. She's like, hey, can you give me product feedback? UX designer just did this. Can you give me product feedback? But I think it's like really inauthentic when it's like you're basically like a social interaction.
Yeah, right. I agree. I'm with you. I'm sort of skeptical on money being used to like facilitate really rich, authentic social interactions. Like I don't ever have that is never an element with my real friends. Like we never the only time we ever exchange money ever is when we're like splitting a bill for a meal or something like that.
Yeah.
So
I actually think I made a cast about this and it like irked people. I forget what it was. It was like, I think I can like look and find it. When we're doing all these degen tips, it seems like it's like, oh, like I'm paying you to be my friend. Like it gives the same energy. And a lot of people were split and they were like, oh, I do this a lot. And I was like, I'm like, that's fair. I think there's like some value, feels like there's a valuable thing, but it also feels like engagement farming. And like, it's a whole new version of engagement farming. And I'm like, they're like, oh, we're just asking questions the same way that we used to ask questions like 2 years ago. I'm like, no, because people would answer like just out of the kindness of their heart. Like there was no status at that time. Like no matter what people think, they're like actually status. Your status was like maybe moving up one spot on Farcaster Network. Ooh.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, so here's a question. Like something that Yasik talks about is degen being Las Vegas. And you go to Las Vegas, you buy some chips, you play a few hours of poker, maybe you win some money, maybe you lose some money, but that at the end of the experience, it was entertaining and it was valuable regardless. And I like love this analogy. I think it's spot on. If that's true, let's say that's correct. That's what degen is. And you're saying that the only thing that would eclipse Farcap daily active usage is a degen focused client. So let's go with the analogy that degen is Las Vegas. I'm curious, what then does that make Warpcast? Like if you had to make like analogy to like a physical place.
Okay. If Warpcast is Las Vegas and degen is the strip.
Oh, interesting.
Warpcast is Las Vegas and degen is the strip. So you can see like, I don't know how many people go and visit. 40 million people visit Las Vegas last year. Those are people who are literally coming for the entertainment, to see all that. They spend their money, they take their money, they come in and they come out. They don't identify as citizens. They identify as tourists. I'm not saying that degen is like just a tourist and like isn't here to stay. But I think it's the strip. Like it offers a level of entertainment. I think having like this L3 allows it to be like the Vegas Strip in a way, which you can set aside however much you want, like let's say 20 grand degen, and then you can just like play around with it. And so like when I did Club TED Poker, which I hosted last week, we played on degen L3 and everyone was like, okay, great, my degen's here. And because it takes you 7 days to withdraw, you're just going to leave it there. Like who's actually going to withdraw it?
Yeah. I wonder, I think I think today, that analogy is correct. And I actually think that's a problem for Warpcast. Like, I think Warpcast should try to become more like LA or more like New York. Like, it should be like, I wish there was less Memecoin, tipping, like all that shit. Like, it would be sick if there was just like a full degen client for that. So if you want to go to the strip and you want to play, you can do that. But like, I don't know. I think LA is like an interesting example because LA is a place that people go to vacation. It's also an industry town at its heart. It's relaxing. It can be very relaxing, but it can also be super intense. Like, I don't know. One of the criticisms of early Warpcast was that it was linked in for it was too nice and it was linked in for boomers, like for like crypto boomers. It's like a professional network. And I think it very much is that. Like, tons of people on Farcaster have meetings with other people on Farcaster. It happens all the time. Like, you just came from a meeting with someone from Farcaster, as did I. Like, it happened all the time. So it's like absolutely a professional network. It definitely feels like an industry town. But if you're someone who comes from like the dark forest of Twitter, it can also feel like a place to vacation. Like for example, like Bored Elon. Like, don't know, he's got like over 1 million followers, something like that on Twitter. And he has like a very different vibe on Warpcast and seems like he's more, free and more can kind of
So
play and
interesting. I think Cooper
yeah,
is the same thing too. We're almost
exactly.
two different persons. But my challenge to Dylan is, and this is must what he be going through. It's like, he's like, hey, there's a lot of people on Warpcast who are complaining about the experience who have been Warpcast native for like a year. He's like, we've already retained you. Like, I'm not saying he's saying this, but this is like what I'm imagining is going through his head. He's like, it actually doesn't matter if we're marginally better for you because you're already here. At this point,
Yeah.
we just need to be marginally better for who are coming from Twitter and who have large followings. And so now I understand why our spam thing is like, he's like, I don't care. Because like for everyone else coming, it's like way more interesting and exciting. Way that like someone from, I don't know, someone from Las Vegas or someone from like Miami.
And to his, in his defense, he was like, your guys' complaints are not specific to Warpcast. What you don't realize, because this is your first time, having a big audience, what you don't realize is these are complaints for having a big audience, not like, and so
Yes and no. You and I both
so
started new accounts, anon accounts from zero, and the same.
the other thing that I would say is like, so what? Like, make it better.
Yeah.
Make it like, just because, just to say like, oh, well, having a big audience sort of makes the UX on an app bad. Like, no, like that, like
No.
you're seeding ground, like you're seeding UX ground, like that, that doesn't mean you still can't make it great. So
Also, I'm just saying to two people, Dan, I love you. I adore you. I respect you. I admire you. I've never once, ever have like made complaints about having too many followers. Like ever.
Never.
I was just, this has nothing to do with it. All of my feedback is like, hey, I'm seeing these issues, or like, okay, yeah, my direct casts right now are unusable. Like, and my notifications are unusable. But I say this and then everyone else agrees who have much smaller accounts. So I've actually like held back from giving some feedback because this is like a very niche me problem. But then I realized it's actually not a niche. I think you've realized that too. It's not a niche problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Session.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Session.
Let's do meme coins. We'll set this up. So we've been talking about meme coins lately, and we decided that for this episode, we wanted to do for and against. So I will make the case for, Ted will make the case against, and then we'll switch. And the purpose of this exercise is to try to see them more clearly and to understand this phenomenon that's happening in front of us. So which side do you want to start with?
I think you just said I'll start with against.
Okay.
It's funny, guys. We tried this the other day and we ended up just being like, ooh, because it's like so hard to argue.
Yeah.
I'll just start. The very basic main arguments of meme coins is only speculative in nature. So then therefore they're inherently unstable and volatile. And because they're only speculative in nature, that's also because they lack utility. So if there's no real world use case or application beyond trading, that limits their long-term value and sustainability. Those are like my two main gripes about them. The ease of creating them and promoting them has led to numerous scams, pump and dump schemes, market manipulation that actually poses a huge risk to investors, mostly retail investors, that has then in turn caused crypto to have a bad reputation, and therefore it's not an ideal learning tool for new users because by the time it gets to retail, it's usually too late. Not to say that all of them are bad, not to say that they all lack utility.
Okay. So the case for meme coins, I think, is that it's decentralized capital formation. Capital formation is very powerful. Like capital in a capitalist society is leverage, and leverage is how you change the world. And so what we're seeing happen is this bottoms up emergence, this something from nothing phenomenon wherein you take a bunch of people in society who have basically no leverage because they're not independently wealthy. And collectively, we're seeing this like leverage emerge from nothing. And that is like something to take seriously now. And just because there's a lack of an allocation or decision making mechanism doesn't mean that there won't be at any point in the future. And so it's, yes, there's some bad players, there's some bad outcomes, but like, you've got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet. And so we're on the forefront of this exciting omelet. And so it's important not to shut that down. It's important not to write it off because, it's a great Paul Graham quote or whoever said this, which is like the next big thing will start off looking like a toy. Meme coins definitely look like a toy today, but we're in the first inning, or you could say maybe second or third inning of them. And so we should be playing these games and we should be encouraging others, who are as well. And we should be trying to learn as much as possible as this emerges. So that's my case for meme coins. Did I convince you?
I agree with them as like a mode of experimentation.
Okay.
And I agree with them as assets that can evolve over time. How can you say that they're a new form of formation when, in theory, somebody puts their money in when, let's say, a coin, this fun thing they're getting on the trend, is like, I don't know, on the up, and then fast forward 2 days and all.
Sure. I mean, what I would say is that's some of what's happening, but not all. Like, look at degen, right? Degen is a good example of something that looked like a meme coin, like it was a money game, and then new things came out of it. It started getting used as like mediums of exchange in other applications. An L3 emerged. There's this whole tipping, innovation. And so in some cases, yeah, it's a pump and dump scheme, but not in all cases.
Yeah. So I would say the difference between degen, and maybe this is just like us distinguishing between like meme coins and shit coins, or meme coins, and I think Seed Club is calling them scene coins. I think I like calling them like community coins or tokens. I think we can call them a lot of stuff. But what you're saying is like kind of the counterpoint, I guess, to my own argument is that there are some that don't lack like value and don't lack a clear use case. So for instance, like degen did based on certain Warpcast or Farcaster characteristics, qualifications, and then you got that. Immediately it said, okay, the way to earn more degen, obviously you could trade it, you could put it into a liquidity pool, but then the way to earn more was to start tipping. And so for me, that is a intrinsic value, the same way that traditional assets like stocks or commodities have a well-defined use case. Degen is a tipping tool that is more powerful than the gift warps button. One thing that I will say is like, okay, then that's actually like, I guess, countering or like counter evidence to like my first point that they all lack intrinsic value. Does that mean, but like, is degen actually unique or?
Well, what I would say is that intrinsic value is something that can happen over time. Like you don't need to have that on day one in order for something to have value.
But it's helpful.
It can be. I mean, okay, so counter argument there is like, look at the wave of ICOs. They kind of represent what you're describing, which is they had these right curve, charismatic plans for all these wonderful things they're going to do. And then they ended up just being scams. And so, and like nothing happened for the vast majority of them. So like, I think, again, speaking to kind of the bottom up nature of these assets, it's that people are buying into an idea and they're not overthinking it. They're just saying, yes, like this is fun. It's game like. And once enough capital is pooled, you have some leverage and you can start doing some interesting things here. And so like we can figure it out as we go.
Yeah, I think we ultimately agree or meet in the middle on a lot of this. It's because we went computer versus casino and we'll go back and forth. But I think this is kind of a little bit off topic. I don't think it's an issue with meme coins. I think until we figure out the design, distribution, and accessibility of meme coins, I don't necessarily know if we can promise that they're the way mainstream society will come on board or for capital formation purposes. One interesting thing is shout out to TLDR Aina in our group chat. I'm so sorry, I probably mispronounced your name. Many such cases group chat is that the psychological behavior of dealing with meme coins and gambling are completely the same. They elicit excitement, anticipation, risk taking, be so appealing to you. You have adrenaline, there's like this dopamine rush. They are also social proof. So it's like, oh, you're talking social cues from another and how to behave. It's total bandwagon. It's like the most fascinating social experiment. I believe that people years from now will be writing anthropology and sociology books with case studies about meme because of this. But be inherently pretty much like an addiction. So when GOAT started to go off, I was on my way to drinks in the car, and it was impossible to do on mobile. You could not do it. One could access and like buy into GOAT if you were on mobile. You had to be glued to your computer on desktop doing it. And that's just not the way that most consumers are going to work. That's not mainstream. I think something else that TLDR said is that you're buying like a lottery ticket with a community, or a lottery ticket and a community. You're just expecting that you probably won't win, and you buy it and like you don't think about it, and they like pull the lottery numbers. That's not what happens with meme coins. Like people are fucking glued to it's like crazy, and it's unhealthy. Personally, it's like actually unhealthy for all of us. I don't think it's good. I think it basically is designing around the worst aspects of like, I don't know, Legion also said that. She was like, it's like, maybe meme coins will help us solve like lack of community. And I was like, what happens when the token goes to zero? Like, what happens? Do you think people are going to feel like nice and happy and cheery? Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so you're now on the bear case.
I went on a tangent. Granted, degen price has dropped 50% in the past however many days. People still love it. The L3 gives people utility. They're not really caring about the price. They just want to be playing games and getting paid and Dracula, etc. So there's nuances to it, but to me, like the behavioral economics and like I don't know, community behavior of it can actually be like.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make my bear case for meme coins, and
Really
I'll say that the whole idea of them being communities and token attention and all these bullshit buzzword sort of terms, that's all fucking smoke. That's all. It's not real. Fundamentally, what's happening is people are putting their money into a pot in exchange for these tokens. And then the more people do that, the more the price of those tokens will go up. And then the game then becomes who can play the longest and not get stuck without a place to sit. It's like this game of musical chairs. And there's nothing that can change that fundamental reality. Like that is like fundamental to what's going on. And if you think that degen belongs in this category, then you're missing the one thing that separates it from all the others, and that's Yasik. And what is Yasik? Yasik is a founder. He is a leader. He is a decision maker. And that is why it is successful. If it didn't have that, it would be a DAO. It would have just been another like loop around the merry-go-round. Like it's just another casino game, and it would have crashed and burned like all the others. And so this idea that you can have like bottoms up, autonomous capital formation, sure, but you still need someone at the helm to determine how that capital is allocated, where, why, importantly, like what is the meaning, what is the vision for this? And if you don't have those critical pieces that can only be put in place by a leader, a group will not do this and has never done this, then it's simply a money game. And so like the way that I would I define a shitcoin or a meme coin is like leaderless and meaningless capital formation that benefits the few who are extremely sophisticated, who are like glued to their computers, who are like playing this game very seriously. It benefits them, and then it does not benefit the people who play it casually, or the suckers who think that that they're actually building community or something like that.
There is a strong sense of community spirit and cohesion, and like shared responsibility is like, okay, he's like, with even people can say whatever they want to say about the L3, but like Syndicate is so helpful. They're like, how can we help you build? Yasik is like, great. Relayer, how can we help you build? And like people are rallying around this. That gives you like, okay, there's an actual sense of like community spirit and cohesion from there. And I think there is like a sense of responsibility that I don't think other Memecoin community have. Like Oxen and Wake and all these others like feel very like a strong sense of responsibility in the fact that they're doing like modern like Telegram channels or whatever because they want Degen to succeed. And
Well, we have bags.
well, they also have bags, exactly.
Yeah.
But they do. They're like economically incentivized. But that being said, like they didn't. I mean, maybe they sold, but like they could have just sold and left. And I think that they didn't. And so that is one thing. And then also I think Yasik listened. Like I'll go to Yasik and I'll be like, hey, Club Ted has all this feedback. Hear me out. Other people will go. And he like genuinely listens and is like, how can I do this and like make this better for everyone? Because Yasik listens, I think everyone has good faith.
There has to be a leader. In some ways, I think that there's a lot of like shit coins masquerading as there's a lot of like fraudsters masquerading as founders and like shit coins masquerading as companies. And I actually think that Degen was like the opposite. Like it like actually had like real vision and a real founder. And like in many ways, it's like operated like a company would, but it's sort of masqueraded as this joke, And so it's like, it's funny to think about that as like a go-to-market strategy almost, where it's like expectations were extraordinarily low. And so it was like by doing some really cool things, he was able to exceed those and people would take him a lot seriously because they just expected so little. Yeah. So, to be honest, like I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Like I think there are a lot of novel behaviors and interactions to pay attention to here. And they are coming out of this like petri dish, of experimentation.
Yeah.
And I think the vast majority of I think that Degen is the exception to the rule. I think
I agree.
we've still yet to see, something else even come close. So,
well, I think it's really interesting. We can dive into Enjoy. I think Enjoy is taking a very similar, like, oh, we'll airdrop and then it's a token. But it'll be interesting to see it happen because it's coming from a venture fund, which I think inherently is like, interesting. Why are you guys doing this? And I think it's on Zora. And I think we've already seen somebody. I remember I just like asked a bunch of questions and was like, who owns this? And I was like, are you making the decisions? And I'm just like, it's okay. Just be transparent about it so that like we all know that we can either celebrate or criticize Yasik for the decisions that are made. And I think that's an important part of community too.
Totally. That goes back to the leader. You need someone, you need a figurehead. You need someone who's saying, this is what we're doing, like it or hate it, here are the reasons why, etc. I'm very bullish on anything with a leader and I'm very bearish on anything without a leader. So maybe that's like my, how like one confirmation, their like investment thesis is so simple. They're just like, we invest in, in products that we use. I wonder how a meme coin fund would do if you're just like, we invest in projects with leaders, like real leaders.
I think there is a venture fund. I'm not going to sell them out.
That's funny.
So it's interesting. Okay. Should we quickly do cast actions?
So I can just maybe give like a quick intro, so we had talked about this, I think, the last episode, and I was like very foggy on the details, like didn't really understand how it worked. And was unclear, like, what's the UX? Like, do you have to paste something in and then it shows up as an action, kind of like how frames work? And I had like a light bulb moment this weekend. So I'm going to I think his ETH is just like Weiju. That's his Ethereum name. He's the founder of the co-founder of Interface. And he made the coolest cast action, which is basically it'll tell you whether or not someone holds a balance of a hypersub NFT. So, you can go to many such cases and the many such cases channel, and then you could click the cast actions icon and it will tell you, does this person hold the many such cases hypersub NFT? And if so, how much time do they have on it? So you have to actually install it. There it is. What the light bulb that went off for me was like, oh, I install this thing. They're like plugins. So you can basically go, and then I found this page actually. It's like classic Farcaster,
This
and of course it's a Notion doc.
is oh
That's
my
just kinda
god.
like random just links in there. But yeah, that's for me, that's the big light bulb is like, "Oh, I can install stuff
Yep,
in, in my Warpcast, and other developers can support this as well so that you can install cast actions
yeah,
in their apps." And then
yep,
those things will, have they extend
mhm,
functionality, client functionality based on the work of other developers,
yep,
just like a Chrome plugin.
yep. And I think I remember when we talked about it last time, I was like, there's two things going on. It's like you can cast action is like you're taking an external action on a cast, like the Chrome extension, and then the other one is like app specific hub data. Is that like
Yeah,
think like you audit like if you have a different app, you automatically make every user install a specific cast action. You are then writing like new data to a hub, which is how like this
very
thumbs
cool.
up one works. So I'm excited to see it. My commentary on it, candidly, is I'm usually like, oh, and like I think this is an amazing concept. I think the go to market on it, um, there is a lot of room for improvement. But
Same
I just
or
waited. Yeah, like I was just like, I didn't even know where to find these. I didn't even know where I could download them. Like, this is a great directory, but like, what? Like, I have no idea. Like, you had to just send it to me. I just went to Varun and Dan's and like couldn't find it into Horsefax. Like, I don't, there needs to be some sort, and maybe it's like a new thing. Like, everyone would tune in. This is an idea. You should just do Farcaster Fridays. And if you're going to ship something new, do a Zoom or a Google Meet or something from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and just tell people how to find these, record the video, and then post the video. Like cut it into
yeah,
small different segments because I couldn't find it. I didn't even, you probably just saw when I was sharing my screen. I only have 2 installed now. I couldn't find it.
yeah. Yeah, same. I
That's
mean,
my,
if you think about frame transactions and how much of a, like, step function, like, for growth that was for Farcaster, it was that was such a big moment for them. And, like, walk back, like, what was happening before? Well, there was multiple docs, there was mini casts, there was demos, mock-ups, like, group chats for developers, and then a week or 2
yeah.
before, there were, like, hackathons, like, there was just an enormous amount of energy that everyone had this feeling like, "Okay, these are gonna be big. This is
Yeah.
gonna really help," with all the things that all the developers care about, which is, like, usage and transaction volume. Same thing kinda happened with frame transaction. There was a similar kind of, like, lead up to this moment of, like, boom, here it is. And this felt like, "Hey, Horsefax has this idea, like, go comment on his Notion doc."
Yeah.
And it's like, but for me, I don't know, like, they're as exciting, it's just like
They're more
because
exciting as
yeah, exactly. Because you get all these little pieces of functionality that don't
the
have as
user,
much.
I'm kind of like sitting here bummed because as a user, I want to play with every single cat action. I couldn't find them.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just like I'm usually so how when like it's when I'm kind
Mhm.
of dang, go to market. Like, what happened?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's, like, fair criticism. Hopefully, that doesn't damper, developers' excitement to experiment and to make new ones. I don't think it will. I think that it might just
Um,
be things that you're like, "Oh, we just have to see, more activity in order to, like, warrant putting in the effort."
yeah, but like again, if there's not a good go to market and it's not easy to find and it's not intuitive, then users aren't going
Yeah,
to be using them, and then developers aren't going to want to
yeah,
build on them. And then like it's this whole thing. And here
yeah, yeah.
I'm being like,
Hopefully,
okay,
they're listening.
yeah,
No, I don't think they listen. Alright, we should
okay,
wrap this up. I know we
yeah.
both gotta go.
Okay. Well, wrapping it up. Thanks for re-recording part 2. And thanks for everyone for listening. I think, like, wow, maybe we should record both of our podcasts twice. I was like, we did pretty good.